Chapter 290. Really? Of course. She gently tucked the strands of hair clinging to her cheek behind her ear and smiled softly. That's probably why she tried to recklessly damage Your Highness's body, too. She must have wanted to completely eliminate the possibility of Your Highness having an heir before His Grace the Grand Duke returned. Talia's expression darkened. Seeing her face, Tyuran gently patted her shoulder before adding, in other words, it also means that Your Highness's fertility hasn't been completely compromised yet. If it had been, someone as cautious as her wouldn't have had any reason to resort to such extreme measures, even at the risk of her own life. At that logical explanation, Talia gradually felt her reason returning. As Tyuran said, if Gareth had already achieved his objective, there would have been no reason for her to use such a highly toxic medicinal substance at the risk of being hanged. Perhaps Gareth's pressure on Marisin had intensified recently. Once the peace negotiations made enough progress, Varkas's long absence from home would come to an end. It was entirely possible that Gareth, anxious that his plans might fall apart, had driven Marisin into a corner. Talia bit her lip. If she were declared incapable of producing an heir, demands for divorce would pour in from the vassals. Perhaps the entire Eastern Noble Alliance would even rise up in revolt. If Varkas, unable to withstand their pressure, signed the divorce papers, the Imperial family would undoubtedly seize the opportunity to push through his remarriage to Ayla. Thinking that far, Talia clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Could Ayla have been involved in all of this, too? Her last conversation with the woman echoed through her mind. The hateful gaze that had rippled darkly like a swamp also came vividly back to her. Perhaps that woman had orchestrated the whole thing. Talia stared down at her own long shadow stretching across the floor with darkened eyes, but soon shook her head. She was far too proud to dirty her hands with such a sordid affair. She might have quietly supported it, but she probably wouldn't have planned the scheme herself. Still, if Varkas divorces me, she'll pounce on him as though she's been waiting for it. Talia gritted her teeth. She could never let things go the way they wanted. If Gareth was so determined to prevent her and Varkas from having an heir, then she would make that very fear a reality. More than anything, she wanted to reclaim the happiness they had taken from her. Can you really restore my body completely? Talia tightly grasped the hem of her clothes as she asked again for confirmation. Of course. But the process won't be easy. Tyuran's expression suddenly grew somber. Your Highness has depended on various sedatives and painkillers for several years. If you stop taking them completely, your body will experience severe withdrawal symptoms while it adjusts to the change. You may experience insomnia, chills, cold sweats, vomiting, and muscle aches. During the first few weeks, the pain and anxiety may actually become worse than they are now. Talia swallowed dryly. How long will that last? About 2 weeks. But once you get through that period, the symptoms will gradually subside, and your body will slowly regain its stability. Tyuran spoke in a confident tone. Talia gazed silently into her serious eyes before finally nodding. All right. I'll do as you say. Perhaps satisfied with her answer, a faint smile appeared at the corner of Tyuran's lips. You'll be able to endure it, Your Highness. Tyuran patted the back of her hand encouragingly before turning and walking again. After walking for some time behind her, an iron door finally appeared at the end of the tunnel. Tyuran stood before it and peered outside through a small opening beside the door. Then she grabbed a handle mounted on the wall and pulled it. At once, a metallic clanking sound rang out. The iron door slowly swung open, revealing the dim interior of a storage room. It's a storage room connected to the main castle. Just go outside like this and climb the stairs. If someone asks where I've been, what should I say? Tell them you were in my cottage. You often spend time there anyway, so no one will find it strange. If anyone asks me, I'll say the same thing. Talia stared at her kind face, speechless. Had there ever been anyone who stood on my side without asking for anything in return, the way she did? Suddenly feeling a lump in her throat, Talia tightly clasped Marison's hand. Thank you. Then she took Khan with her and stepped outside the storage room. Just as Tyuran had said, the storage room was connected to the main castle. After passing through the dark corridor, Talia used the steep staircase reserved for servants to climb to the second floor. Then she heard voices murmuring nearby. Talia slowed her steps and cautiously entered the corridor. In front of the Grand Duke's bedroom, servants dressed in night clothes and armed guards had gathered together. As Talia cautiously approached, she saw the door lying on the floor, ripped completely off its hinges, and swallowed a groan. So that's how Khan got out of the room. He must have broken the door and bolted. She glanced at Khan, who was still standing there with his ears and tail drooping as he stared at the floor, and frowned. Don't tell me he did the same thing to the castle gate. If Khan had caused a commotion while escaping the castle, her excuse about having been at Tyuran's cabin would not hold up. Suppressing her nervousness, she deliberately stepped forward with an air of composure. What's all this commotion about? Your Highness. The captain of the guard pushed through the servants and approached her, demanding in an accusatory tone. Where have you been? I couldn't sleep, so I went for an early morning walk with Khan. I stopped by Tyuran's cabin, had a cup of tea, and I'm on my way back. A suspicious look appeared on the man's rough face. He pointed toward the broken door with his chin and said sarcastically, You went for a walk after breaking down the door? I was trying to get outside, but the lock must have been broken because it wouldn't budge. So I had Khan break it. Talia lifted her chin and answered shamelessly. The man narrowed his eyes as he looked down at her, then folded his arms across his chest and continued interrogating her. Then why are your clothes wet? I played around in the spring in the garden while I was out walking. Talia answered indifferently as she wiped the water from Khan's wet face. But despite her outward calm, she was inwardly burning with anxiety, afraid that the man might notice the traces of blood she had failed to wash away completely or catch the smell of blood. Fortunately, the captain of the guard seemed unable to find anything suspicious. The man frowned in displeasure before finally letting out a heavy sigh. Next time, please inform us before leaving the castle. If anything happens to Your Highness, the responsibility will fall entirely on us. I understand, so you can leave now. Talia replied somewhat irritably before abruptly turning toward the staircase in the center of the castle. Then, as though nothing were amiss, she gave orders to the maids lined along the corridor. I'll use a room on the third floor until the door is repaired, so prepare bathwater there. Without waiting for a reply, she took Khan and climbed the stairs. The moment she finally stepped into the bedroom, the composure she had barely maintained collapsed, and all the strength drained from her legs. She leaned her back against the door and exhaled deeply. Khan approached her and rested his head against her shoulder. Talia gently wrapped an arm around his neck and whispered in an exhausted voice, It's all right, Khan. From now on, everything will get better. The wolf quietly gazed at her with his icy blue eyes. After staring into those eyes filled with sorrow and pain for a long while, Talia eventually pressed her forehead against Khan's head and quietly closed her eyes. Tyuran began by collecting every medicine bottle that had been piled up in Talia's bedroom. This included not only the medicines Marison had prepared, but also the sedatives and painkillers Talia had been taking for a long time.